Hey, welcome back to Next Third Best Third. I'm David Fenwick, your founder and your host, and this morning I'm with my good friend Ron Atkins.
Hey, it's good to be here, Dave.
Yeah, so good always to have you. For those of you who don't know, Ron's got an amazing story. He was sentenced to 5 99-year prison sentences.
That's right.
And then while he was in prison, he was considered one of the, if not the most violent inmate in Texas penal system.
Gang member.
Gang member. He was sentenced to 5 more years while he was in prison for violence. So he had 500 years prison sentence on him. And lo and behold, you're 10 years out now.
Yeah.
But what age were you when you went into prison?
I was 18 years old.
18 years old. And how many years did you spend?
26 years.
26 years.
Yeah.
And some of that was in a very special place, wasn't it? A little
Yeah.
5x8.
Yeah, 13 years of it was solitary confinement.
5x8 cell.
Yep.
And for those of you who can't tell, Ron is a large man.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine you fitting.
I could lean against one wall and put my feet up on the other.
That's crazy. That is absolutely insane to think about. But what I wanted to go into is we take so much for granted, right? Those of us who haven't had your experience. But I thought it'd be cool and very interesting for you to talk about what it was like coming out of prison after 26 years and
Yeah.
discovering this world that was totally different than when you went in.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was like, I always say it was like Rip Van Winkle waking up from his sleep, the old fable.
Yeah.
But yeah, when I first got out in May 5th of 2015, I had been in prison since about 91, and I never used the internet or didn't know how to send an email or use a gas pump or a debit card or anything.
That's crazy.
So I had to just start relearning everything, and there was men that came alongside of me that helped me, and from church and different places, and I always tell the story that I taught myself how to run heavy equipment on YouTube, and that was my first job.
That's amazing.
I've been running heavy equipment ever since.
So you discovered YouTube.
Yeah, I discovered YouTube, and I mean that part of it wasn't so bad. It was other things that were just learning how to like when you're in prison. All your options are narrowed down. They tell you what to eat. They tell you when to sleep. They tell you, you know what I mean. You got very narrow options. So I always say living for God in prison is really easy because there's nothing to come in. It's no option there.
Yeah.
So when I got out, one of the main things I had to learn, I used to say freedom is patience with all the options. Because I thought I was a patient person. I sat in that cell for 13 years, 26 years in prison. That should have taught me some patience,
Right.
How to wait at least.
Yeah.
But when you get out like that and there's so much opens up for you, you just want to do everything all at once, and it can be overwhelming.
Well, I imagine.
Like I always use the example, like when first time I went in a grocery store, I went in a cereal aisle. I'd been eating Cheerios and Frosted Flakes for 20-something years. And there's all these cereals, and I got stuck just trying to figure out what to buy.
So you couldn't make a decision?
I couldn't make a decision.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And so it was, that kind of thing was harder to overcome than just the technology part of it. It came pretty quick, but the decision-making part of it, and I think I still struggle with making decisions sometimes, even now. And it gets overwhelming.
Wow, it's incredible to think about, right? That you came and that you were actually getting handcuffed by all the options.
Yeah, yeah. And so, but then I've changed over the years. I think now freedom's not patience with all the options. I think it's discipline with all the options, right?
Yeah.
Discipline with all the options, because you can't do everything all at once. You
No.
can't make it all happen all at once.
No.
And, here I am 10 years later, and there's still all these things I want to have happen, but God's taught me, to be disciplined and patient and think about what I'm doing, make the right decisions, and let Him lead me step by step.
So
I think that was one of the biggest things I had to learn was, I knew how to let God lead me from being in prison, but not when it was everything like all at once.
Right. It was all there for you.
Every option is there. You can do whatever
any
you want.
direction. You could do anything in your life, basically. Right.
Yeah.
So, from your experience, when guys and gals, when they get out of prison and they're exposed to all these options, is that part of the reason they go back in? Because they mishandle it, or talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's a big reason why they go back in, because one of the things, we always say in our ministry is they don't know what they want, but they want what they know. So if all you known is like addiction and abuse and prison, you know that.
Yeah.
Right? So when everything else is uncertain, well, you know this. So unless somebody else comes alongside of you and teaches you something better, shows you, helps you realize what you really want, then you're going to keep going back to it because it's what you know.
So there's comfort in what you know.
Yeah.
And there's
fear and uncertainty.
And even though the uncertainty is actually the right thing or the better thing for you.
There's a great scene in the movie Shawshank Redemption. There's a great scene in it with the old man that gets out of prison after 40 years, 50 years, whatever it was. Hadlin was his name. And he hangs himself in the halfway house room that he's staying in.
Yeah.
But that night he says, "I'm tired of being afraid all the time." The night before he hangs himself. That's one of the lines in the movie.
Wow.
I'm tired of being afraid all the time, right? And so that's who, they must have had good consultants on that, because that's exactly what happens to you when you get out. There's just fear, man. Fear just bombards you because you don't know. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And you got to go out here and operate in this world that you have no idea who's trying to, scam you or what's, you just don't know. And it paralyzes you in a way. And you just got to you got to keep pushing forward and keep breaking out of that until, luckily that's what given me a real heart for men and women coming out of prison is just knowing that fear, like waking up at night in your bed, not even knowing where you're at sometimes,
Yeah.
And wanting to accomplish all this stuff, but not knowing how to do it.
Right.
And not knowing how to learn how to do it even.
I think
it's just huge. It's a lot of fear involved.
It's amazing to think about because, I think most people would think, oh, well, you're coming out of prison. Well, the world's your oyster. Look at all the, you can do anything you want, right? You got to be excited and there's all this opportunity. But you're saying that all that opportunity is actually what causes you to struggle, right? You don't know if it's the right choice, the wrong choice, and all these different things.
Or even how to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, it just that's the main thing I dealt with, I think, was fear. And, there's fear in freedom because there's an unknown to it,
Right.
I think one of the big lessons in the Bible that God taught us about it was when Moses went to Pharaoh and, he said, "Let my people go." That's what we always hear. We always quote that part.
Right.
But we forget about the part where he said, "So that they may go into the wilderness and worship me." And the wilderness is a bad place.
Right.
And God didn't want to just set them free willy-nilly. He wanted them to go and do a certain thing. Go into the wilderness and worship me.
Yeah.
Right? He wanted their attention to be focused. But they had of course, we know the story. When they went out there, they had their attention on everything but him.
Right.
Right?
And so they wandered for 30 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
40 years.
Or 40 years, yeah.
Yeah. So, that's a big deal. I mean, it comes back to what we've talked about attention. I mean, you gotta attend to what God's saying. You gotta attend to Him. You gotta focus your attention on Him.
Yeah.
And let Him lead you.
Yeah.
Right.
So
and that's where freedom comes, through that discipline.
Yeah.
It's not just, hey, we're just going to open the doors and let you run out here.
Yeah.
That's where you're going to fail, because there's so much fear. I mean, that's what they experienced in the wilderness, was fear, right? Fear of the enemy, fear of the natural elements, fear of going hungry. Every type of fear you could think of, they experienced it.
Yeah.
And they mismanaged it because they weren't focused on Him leading them.
Right. So obviously, your faith has been so key for you to be able to navigate this last 10 years, right?
For sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, without Him, I wouldn't have made it.
Well, Scripture says perfect love casts away all fear, and that's it for you. I know that as being your story, but, again, to think about how you had to come out and basically learn how to be free and learn how to make choices and learn how to navigate through this world, right?
Yeah, I know it's. I would almost say it's impossible without Him, without God. But I mean, you got to really understand that in prison, everything is done for you. Everything's, it's so regimented and routine. Everything's routine.
Right.
And when you get out, all that stuff just like blows up. Now there's no routine. There's no fixed thing. There's no, there's another great line in Shawshank Redemption when they talk about being institutionalized. And Morgan Freeman says, when you get to prison, first you hate the walls. Enough time goes by, you get used to the walls, and then enough time goes by after that, you start to depend on the walls.
Wow.
And that's institutionalized. And that's what I was. Even though I tried to stay, I tried to read and thousands of books and stay current on magazines and newspapers and stuff like that. But I was still institutionalized.
So let me get a little personal here, because you basically, too, you had to come out and learn how to be a friend, how to be a husband, right? You've had to learn how to do things that so many of us just kind of naturally acclimated and became, but you actually had to learn how to have relationships.
That's right.
Because you didn't have any.
Still learning.
Yeah. Well, true.
I don't know if I'm that good at it. But yeah, because that's another thing, in prison. It's I've studied a lot about attachment theory, and you get chaotically attached, you get emotionally detached, because you don't emotionally engage with people or connect with people in there, because they're they're most of the time con artists or criminals, and they got their own, everybody's out for themselves basically, you know what I mean? Yeah. Or the gang culture, they're out for whatever their gang's got going on or whatever. So you don't develop relationships like that. And even within your own gang, people are backstabbing and
sure,
so it's a cutthroat
so
environment.
Did you find there was fear then of just being, building friendships?
For sure, yeah. Yeah, trust issues.
Yeah, for
sure. Yeah, I can't count the number of times my wife's got on me about prison mentality. That's prison mentality.
Yeah.
If I said something about, somebody's out to get me, or somebody's against me, or this or that, whatever it was I was saying, it was coming from that prison mentality.
Yeah, but that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, you were there for so long.
Yeah, and I still catch myself thinking it sometimes, and I have to check myself on it, or other guys around me check me on it,
Yeah.
because it can get overwhelming. And but I think now enough times went by, I'm not institutionalized anymore. But for a long time at first I was, when I first got out, I still wanted to cook the same spreads I was eating when I could just go down here and get a steak.
Right. Right.
Or still wanted to still like in prison, they give you a towel for the week or whatever. You got to hang it up to dry, and you turn it in at the end of the week.
Yeah.
I was still hanging my towels up to dry, you know, when I got 10 of them in the closet,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, stuff like that. So, or, I remember times just not being able to decide, you know, just where to go eat or what I wanted to eat, or cooking a meal for myself or whatever.
Yeah.
Just crazy stuff like that you wouldn't think normally about.
Yeah.
That I struggle with.
You know, one of the pillars in Next Third, Best Third is the identity, right? The things we believe about ourselves, lies or truth, whatever, you know, and we talk a lot about the power of agreement,
Right.
you know, what you're agreeing with. So you coming out of prison, I mean, talk about that, what your identity was, because what got you in there, right, as a boy and a young man, but by the time you turned 18, then your identity coming out and discovering. And we're all always growing in that, right? I mean, again, we never fully arrive, but what has that been, that journey?
Well, I think for many years in prison, my identity was those 5 life sentences, 5 99-year sentences. Because I would say, you know, I got all this time. These people can't tell me nothing. I'm gonna do whatever I want. They can't do nothing to me. You know, that was my attitude. That was my identity. Everybody knew, hey, that dude's got a bunch of time. Don't mess with him.
Right. They can't you know, you're sentenced to 500 years. I mean,
Yeah.
what are they gonna
What
do?
more can they do
That's
but
right.
send me to the death penalty? And I kind of wanted to die anyway.
Yeah.
I think sometimes I was trying to suicide by cop
Yeah.
when I was fighting all them officers and stuff. But that's one of the things I can't thank God enough for the way he brought me out. Like it seemed. I mean, at the time, I was thinking it was just horrible. And like when I first made parole on those 5 99-year sentences in 2012, and then I still didn't get out because I had another 5 years to do. And I was like, God, what are you doing? You know, you got me out of this, and now I'm still here.
Yeah.
But he knew I needed that time to figure out my identity, and he took me through a process. And so first, it was me and him alone in that cell for about 3 years, almost 4 years. And him just beating it into my head that I was valuable.
It's a funny way of saying it. Beating
You know what I
it
mean?
in your head.
Yeah, because like over and over again, he was just continually teaching me how valuable I was to him. That if I had been the only person on the earth, he would have done it just for me. That, you know, because I never felt valuable for in my life before that. I always felt like, you know, the way my dad would always be like, you know, stupid, you're never going to amount to nothing, you're just dumb, and yada, yada, yada. So that's the way I thought of myself, you know. And so through that process, and then when he actually brought me out of solitary confinement and sent me to the WIN unit where I got in with Papa Charlie and Mama Judy in the school of supernatural ministry in the prison. That's where I met Danny. And in that process, he really showed me his heart and who I am in him.
Yeah.
And so that changed my identity again. Because up to that point, I was still carrying around all this guilt and shame and condemnation behind all the people I'd heard, all the things I'd done, and my family. My dad had already passed away. My mom was struggling with her health and just all this stuff that I was carrying around with me. And he began, through that process of about 3 more years, he began to just take that stuff off of me through inner healing, sozo, and just really watching Charlie model the Father's heart for us.
Yeah.
And it really changed everything. And so then I get out, and I have to go through this whole other change, because here I am, this guy that had 500 years in prison, and he's out, right? And so then, you know, I met my wife about 10 months later and immediately get into ministry with her and going back into prisons and you know, then she brought kids and grandkids into the mix, and just all that, dynamic.
Right.
I had to learn how to go from being a son to being a father.
Wow.
And that changed my identity again.
Yeah.
And God took me through that process through the girls in the ministry, and they just really tenderized my heart because I was rough. I was still raw and rough from prison, living in there all my life. In prison we call it state raised. You got to figure from 17 to 42, that was my life.
Yeah.
And so,
half of your life.
Yeah. And so God had to take me through that process of tenderizing my heart. And, at one point, it was me with 12 women in the house. Even my little dog was female. And so, I used to always make a joke. I would stroll up in Hobby Lobby with my flip-flops on and my caramel macchiato and my little toy Yorkie and dare somebody to say something.
That's funny.
But God used that process from those having those daughters in my life to really, tenderize my heart and change me and really identify me as a father.
Right. I know when people get to know you now, and I've seen it firsthand, no one can really believe your story because you are so kind.
Yeah.
You are such a approachable, gentle giant, and people feel real safe around you. But that's been God taking you on this journey of re-identifying you and letting you know who you really are.
Yeah.
We talk about...
I feel schizophrenic sometimes.
Yeah, well...
Like that was some kind of alternate personality or something.
Well, you've been transformed, right?
Yeah.
And you're being transformed. But,
for sure.
Guys who follow us and listen, they wrestle with these identity things. They maybe didn't end up in prison, but, they had fathers who told them they're dumb, and fathers who told them they never accomplish anything, or they've had, woundedness from their past. And, we all can carry regret. We all can carry shame. We can all carry into our, for the years, feeling unworthy. I carried for 50 years a sense that I wasn't worthy, and it was interesting for me because it wasn't until my wife left and I was there turning age 60, after 30 years with somebody. And where in the middle of processing through that is where I learned the truth that I was worthy. You would think I would have felt more unworthy, but I came face to face with it, right? And thank God was brought through, But you have such a message for all of us guys, because if anybody could have came and kind of, be justified in feeling unworthy and feeling...
I still do sometimes, yeah.
I know, but
I try to justify it, but people take me out.
I know.
I got good brothers around me like you that bring me out of it.
Yeah. But again, it goes through where one of the things I admire most is, and I'm so grateful for, is how you have had all these guys in your life, right? And you've availed yourself to them, and you've invested in them too. You've had to learn how to become a brother.
That's right. Yeah, that's probably the next part of the journey. After he began to deal with me on the father issue, then eventually brought these men into my life.
Yeah.
And started teaching me how to be a brother.
Yeah. Not just a friend, but a brother.
Yeah. All these aspects are incorporated into your identity,
Yeah.
as you move along. Because, I had a false perception of what a brother was from, living that gang life in prison for so many years. We called each other brothers.
Right.
Bros.
Right.
And sort of made believe we were a family. But it was really just all counterfeit.
So how long did it take you, and maybe you can't quantify it, but how long did it take you to really start trusting other guys?
Oh, it's taken some years.
Mm-hmm.
Probably about 7 or 8 years of being out of prison.
Yeah.
Even now, I still struggle with it sometimes.
Yeah.
there's only very few men that I totally trust, like you or Danny or a couple others. But I mean, there's other ones that are still at the sort of the next level.
Yeah.
We used to say when us long timers in prison, you got the 2-year plan, you got the 5-year plan, you got the 8-year, 10-year, 15-year of how long you've known somebody.
Yeah.
Right. Whether or not you trust them or not.
Yeah. That's true
You know what I mean?
in life.
Yeah. But, the farther I go along, the more God builds that in me,
Yeah.
and more he shows me. And now he's bringing in, younger guys to come and try to, build trust with.
Right.
And so, I mean, that's important too. It's like you were saying a while ago, you can't just be pulling on guys. You got to be giving back.
That's right.
You know
That's
what I
right.
mean?
Well, I've always said this: if a man's really in a healthy position, he's got 3 prototypical guys in his life. It's the guy that they're, drawing off of, the guy that they aspire to be like, the guys they're walking with, and then the guys they're investing in.
Right.
If you've got all 3 of those prototypical men in your life, you're in a pretty good place.
Right. Yeah, you need that, and that's part of what going back in prison and stuff like that is too.
Yeah.
Just giving back.
So you go back into prison, and you do this often. I know that you go and you encourage and you speak and you just bring hope.
It's always fun to walk back out the door.
Yeah.
It's kind of iffy walking in there when they close it behind you.
Yeah,
though.
you're like, uh-oh.
You start wondering if they're going to open it back up or not.
That's funny. That's funny.
It's just old behavior.
Yeah. So here you are, 10 years out, married. You're working. You've got friends. You do all this. What's next for you? Where do you see yourself in the next couple of years? What's some of your goals?
Well, there's always the ministry, and I love to see what God does in men and women's lives, and I honestly I hadn't thought a whole lot about not too far in the future.
Yeah.
But just I just want to be led by the Lord.
Yeah.
And He's always opening up opportunities. I think there's a new opportunity opening up for me at the Hughes unit to maybe to run a school there, like the one I was in on the Win unit.
Right.
And that's coming up in a few months, and I'm really excited about what maybe God may be doing with that.
Yeah.
And I still got my book that I've done a few chapters on, but I've been slacking big time.
Yeah. You need to get that out.
And I need to get that done. And I think God's going to do some amazing things whenever
Oh, no question.
that happens. And I look forward to hearing some put in for a pardon, and I'm looking forward to hearing God do something with that.
Right.
To really get totally free, because I'm still on life parole here in Texas. But it's not a big deal. I'm on super low supervision, so I just call in every now and then.
Yeah, we want to get that pardon though. Right.
Yeah, I want to get that. And as far as work goes, we've been doing a lot of good work on the border, and I love who I work for, and he's an amazing boss. And just see where all that goes.
Yeah, I just kind of ended on this note, just publicly encourage you, because, set some tangible goals, because the world needs you. You know? There's guys all around that need you, guys and women, but the world needs you.
See, that's another bit, just to get a little bit, another thing that we probably didn't touch on. When you're in prison like that, you got dreams about what you want to do when you get out, but you're not setting goals. That's always been a problem for me, is setting goals. And what I really like, I never had any dreams because I thought I was going to spend the rest of my life in prison.
Right.
And so ever since I've been out, and I still struggle with it today, I have trouble having a dream.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or a vision for what in the future.
Yeah. Well, I encourage you.
Because for so long I just put that down.
Now, I encourage you, like I encourage so many men, is recently, very recently, just in this last 6 months or so, I have embraced daydreaming again. Not just dreaming, but daydreaming, because daydreaming is intentionally asking what if, what could be. And of course, I do that with the Lord, right? I do that with God, and I daydream with Him, and it's affecting me. It's changing me. So I encourage you, start daydreaming. What's the what ifs? Right?
Okay.
So, and I encourage you guys to start daydreaming. What if? Ron's story is so incredible, and I'm so glad that you were able to come and just give us a little more insight into it.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah,
It's been too long.
It's been too long. But guys, again, this is a story of redemption, but it's a story of the reality that we all have things that fear just handicaps us, right? There's all these choices to all of us every day. It's like, what are you doing today? What's the choices you're making? And I just encourage you to examine your life, right? Where you are right now, taking honest appraisal, and then living with intentionality. Start addressing the way you're thinking, the way you're living, taking care of yourself, your emotional well-being, right? The relationships you have. Seek out these men that we're talking about, and then address these lies that you've believed about yourself that are true, that lies they're trying to rob from you. Because if you do that, and if you live with that intentionality, I guarantee you the next third of your life is going to be the best third. So thanks again. If you do me a favor, if you'd click like, subscribe if you haven't, share, comment. It all helps this platform grow so that we can bring hope to more men. See you next time.
Thanks.
All right.